Welcome to the CCN podcast, where we discuss the latest trends, companies, and people shaping the cryptocurrency space. I'm your host, Jake Sylvester. Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm here with George Lee, the CEO and co-founder of WeTrust. How you doing today, George?
Doing great. It's great to be here, Jake.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you on. So tell us a little bit about what WeTrust is.
So WeTrust is a blockchain-based company that builds decentralized financial collaboration tools. Our current main product is a product called Spring, which is focused on crowdfunding for nonprofit organizations.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about how you got into that market and the use of blockchain in nonprofit organizations.
So our history of the company, we kind of started in late 2016, and we started with the initial notion of building out a product called Trusted Lending Circles, actually in 2017. And that product was more geared for consumers to raise funding amongst each other. However, that product is more geared for developing countries. So we evolved the product to become more focused on organizations. And we found it to be a natural fit to focus on nonprofit organizations, and grew. We believe that the blockchain community has an ethos of supporting organizations and causes that they really believe in. And it would be a natural fit to evolve the product to focus on nonprofits and help them connect with the blockchain community.
I'm curious about some of the advantages of using blockchain in nonprofits.
So the first step, I think, is to expand the education and awareness of cryptocurrency and blockchain to the nonprofit community, which is very vast, and also it's a very different audience right now. And so right now there's a lot of education needed to broaden the adoption. And I think that's overall good for the blockchain ecosystem in general. Now, the benefits for the nonprofit ecosystem is that they can first and foremost, tap into a new channel for fundraising. Many of these organizations, they can tap into a new community that they might otherwise not be able to raise money from. So at a very fundamental level, the first step is just accessing this cryptocurrency community as a first step. And after that, there's many different types of things that can be enabled by blockchain. One thing that we're experimenting with is the hypothesis that we can use blockchain to make this donation process more fun and engaging. The way we're doing that is by the concept of the NFT and giving donors a token of appreciation, a NFT, when they make a donation. This not only commemorates their donation through this token, can serve as a receipt, and it can also help them kind of remember that, hey, they made this donation in the past, and can help them remind them in the future to continue supporting the causes that they care about. So NFTs is a concept that we're exploring right now in the context of nonprofits and donations and so forth. A second item that I believe will be very helpful is using blockchain governance. This can be especially useful for organizations that are less notable, that have less reputation, and might be trying to achieve a task that is very difficult, and people are skeptical of whether they have the ability to accomplish that. And through governance mechanisms, you can create basically a way where people donate to a nonprofit who holds a multi-sig wallet, and they have governance controls which people will only sign off on releasing funds when they hit certain milestones. And if at some point, people determine that the project cannot achieve its goals, there can be a refund and so forth. So these kind of mechanisms, I think, blockchain is very well suited for.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm curious about with your product is if it has any gearing toward political elections. So I'm from the U.S., and we had a big controversy this year over political donations, where they're coming from, and how to increase transparency there. So I'm curious if your project is geared toward that at all.
That's something that we actually talked about recently. So right now, we do have a focus on nonprofit organizations, starting with 501c3s in the U.S. We are actively looking to add nonprofit organizations or NGOs from other parts of the world that are not 501c3s. We're also looking at adding open source projects that are not nonprofits. And we've also discussed, of course, political campaigns and so forth. Not just in the U.S., but it could be anywhere in the world. And ultimately, that is a challenge because we need to, especially for U.S. Political campaigns, there needs to be very rigorous types of KYC on the donations and different types of rules for how much money can be raised and so forth. And if we want to tap into that market, then we will need to definitely get up to speed with those types of rules. And with cryptocurrency, one of the things that is very important then, if we want to integrate with that kind of a fundraising market, is the different types of KYC tools that we would need to integrate. If we are able to do that, or if someone else is able to do that, I think then cryptocurrency could also be very interesting for political campaigns. One thing that we're exploring right now that we just did is the liberal radicalism LR matching concept that Vitalik and Glenn Wheel and Zoe, they wrote a paper on this, which is where a wealthy donor can say, hey, I'm going to donate X dollars, not to any specific political campaign, perhaps, or any specific nonprofit, but I will then match individual contributors in a way that's very democratic. And so I think for political campaigns, that kind of concept could fit very well, where you use blockchain type technology to allow donors to say, hey, I support the process, the political process. I don't have a particular candidate in mind. I'll donate to this pool of money, and this money will be distributed to all the candidates based on some algorithm. So I think that the blockchain will be very suitable for, because you can manage that more easily using smart contracts and so forth.
Yeah, it's interesting. I interviewed a candidate for U.S. Senate named Austin Peterson, and because of the Federal Election Commission rules, he actually had to return about $130,000 in Bitcoin. So there's definitely a lot of nuances there, and awesome problems for you to tackle. So let's talk a little bit about the recent announcement on Tuesday of the survey results. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what you found out?
Yes. So we conducted a survey with people who have cryptocurrency, and we wanted to understand their sentiment and their perspectives on donations, because it was our hypothesis going into this that the crypto ethos, people who were into Bitcoin or Ethereum early on, have also strong feelings on supporting causes that they really believe in, whether that is for internet freedom or medical research or helping homeless, whatnot. Right? We've seen many different cases, anecdotes where there was an organization in Florida that helped homeless people, and they raised a lot of Bitcoin and so forth. And we wanted to see if how widespread this was. So the survey results were very positive. Some tidbits I'd like to share are, overwhelming majority of crypto investors, 77% want to donate with cryptocurrencies. And one of the issues is not enough charities, not enough organizations are accepting cryptocurrencies. 62% say, they would be very excited if charitable organizations embrace cryptocurrencies as a new way to fundraise, because it also shows adoption or interest in the crypto space. So people in blockchain want to see greater adoption, greater usage, and what better place to see that than nonprofit organizations that they want to support anyway. So these are some of the interesting things we've learned. The other thing is blockchain folks are really interested in transparency. So one of the things that they've mentioned in these surveys and confirmed our hypothesis is that people do believe that using blockchain can instill greater transparency and accountability for how donations are managed. And when that happens, people are more willing to donate because they can see that the money is being used a certain way and it's achieving a certain type of impact. So similar to how the U.S. stock market is for the different faults that people might think it has, it's more transparent than many other markets, and as a result, people are more willing to invest, right? And similarly for nonprofits, if there's more transparency on results and how the money is used, we believe people will be more willing to donate, and therefore nonprofits will be able to achieve more.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I'm curious about with the donations to nonprofits is the appreciation aspect. So back in 2017, as crypto was really going up, Julian Assange from WikiLeaks actually tweeted out a thank you to Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, and Amex for banning him, because he ended up making 50,000% returns for WikiLeaks on donations because they were forced to use Bitcoin. How does that play into charities' decisions to accept or not accept cryptocurrencies? And how does that affect donors' willingness to donate in cryptocurrencies?
Absolutely. That's a great question, because we actually spoke to some nonprofits and they said that they believe, at least some of the leaders of certain nonprofits, they personally believe that the cryptocurrency space has a lot of potential, and that usually they receive money in US dollars, and there are certain restrictions on how they can manage those dollars. And one of the benefits of accepting cryptocurrency is that it allows them to gain some exposure to the potential upside of cryptocurrency in a way that is very much in line with the policies and so forth. If they wouldn't be able to accept US dollars and use those US dollars to buy Bitcoin or Ether, they could choose Ether and continue to hold it as Ether if they believe, if they don't have a urgency to spend it immediately, and they can choose to spend dollars and keep the Ether instead. So there's definitely an audience of people in nonprofits who also believe in the long-term trajectory of this overall market. And that figures into their ethos. Now, there's other folks who might see, not might, but we know that they are using this as simply a way to tap into as a new revenue stream for fundraising, and they're more inclined to sell sooner once they receive it. And that's okay too.
Yeah, and I guess that's important for financial planning as well, right? If you have $50,000 in a pretty volatile cryptocurrency could be worth 2 or 3x tomorrow, but it could also be worth nothing, right?
Yeah, especially in the current downturn, you have that effect of people may not, the nonprofits won't be happy when these things decline, and so it's their choice on how frequently or how soon to sell once they receive the donation. On the other side, on the donor side, we believe that, and this is also through anecdotal evidence and talking to nonprofits, a lot of donors want to donate when they have appreciated assets, because it definitely helps with their tax planning on the donor side. It's much better to donate the crypto directly as opposed to selling the crypto and then, donating afterwards, because you still owe the taxes on capital gains. And so that, despite the current down market, we were very pleased in our recent fundraising, where over 200 people donated over 200 Ether to the various nonprofits. And this was, thrown together kind of last minute. So it's very promising to see some good traction and a ton of support from the Ethereum community. And we think that as the market stabilizes and recovers, that this really validates this concept where people do want to use cryptocurrencies for donations, and we'll continue to iterate on that.
One of the things I'm curious about is if you guys have looked into, for instance, requiring nonprofits to hold the currency for a certain amount of time. Because in a way, if you donate enough money to a nonprofit and they immediately sell, it could actually hurt the donor if they're a pretty large holder of, let's say, Ethereum. I think we actually saw a lot of this in the ICO marketplace, where investors bought Ethereum to go after, or to invest in an ICO, and then the ICO dumped the Ethereum, and the original investors were actually hurt by that. Is that something you've given any thought to? And if so, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's interesting. We think that if there is, so as an organization, as a fundraising platform, we may not, require organizations to take a certain action on or strategy on their Ethereum holdings that they receive from donations. But we believe it would be very interesting if there were some kind of feature or some kind of proof or some way for nonprofits to signal and say that, hey, we won't sell for this period of time, or this is our strategy. And that could help them receive more donations from the community, because donors might see that as another factor in their decision-making process. And that might encourage them to donate more or donate at a certain time. And so I think that that is definitely something that could make nonprofits more attractive if they want to tap into this community. And not only from a financial perspective, like the example you gave, where a large holder doesn't want to hurt their own holdings when they make a donation. But it also speaks to the ethos. Does this nonprofit also believe in the long-term viability of cryptocurrency? And do they just see this as a new revenue stream, or do they actually also support the overall ethos of decentralization and so forth? So I think those are reasons why. So those are things that we're considering.
Interesting. And I guess that would behave similar to a donor-advised fund. Is that correct? So we've spoken to some nonprofits that already accept Ether, and they've said to us anecdotally that some large crypto holders have timed their donations based on market conditions. So donors will donate when Ether's gone up, so that benefits the donors' tax liability issues, and then the donor would tell them kind of when to sell and so forth.
And that was very surprising and very interesting because that's quite a bit of micromanagement. But I suppose nonprofits are willing to do that if the funds are large enough. So in a sense, when donors do that, it is kind of similar to what you're describing, the donor advised fund, but more on a personal basis, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk a little bit about some of the tax incentives for crypto traders, investors, founders, and how that can help incentivize some of the donors to really go all in helping these nonprofits.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm not a tax accountant or lawyer, so don't take any of this as tax advice. But from our conversations and understanding, the main, actually, we can boil it down to a very simple concept: is there's tax benefits if in donating. If you are planning to donate already, and you are planning to sell your cryptocurrency to have capital gains, then it's a clear win to donate the cryptocurrency directly. Because if you were to sell your cryptocurrency to have capital gains, to have gains in general, then once you sell it, you have to pay those capital gains taxes, no matter what you do with the proceeds that you receive from selling. Whereas if you donate directly, that's something you can save, and also it benefits the nonprofit a lot more. They can sell it for you, and they can receive the full amount of the proceeds. So that is, I think, a simple concept that many people are not aware of, because although it also exists for stocks, donating stocks is, my understanding, is not a very common thing among average people, unless you have you're a startup founder, or you have a lot of company stock, etc. But even then, most people typically just donate dollars. But cryptocurrency, because the gains can be so much, at least last year, maybe in the future, this is something to really consider if you have causes that you support. Is, instead of selling, you can donate directly, and it can benefit yourself as well as nonprofit, benefit them much more than you could have.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting concept, and I'm definitely going to be watching you guys closely to see how this ends up going. So is there anything else that we haven't touched upon that you might want to add?
As I kind of mentioned before, we're focused on nonprofit organizations. We have 20 or so, or a little bit less than 20 organizations on our platform, and we're in the process of onboarding a bunch more, about 10 or so. But there's still a lot of nonprofits out. I mean, that's only 30, and there's thousands and thousands of nonprofit organizations out there. So we're really interested and passionate about evangelizing and onboarding more organizations onto our platform. So if any of listeners out there have a nonprofit that you're really passionate about and you support, and you want to nominate them, please make introductions, or send us an email at support@WeTrust.io, and we'd love to onboard your favorite nonprofit. At the same time, we are looking to onboard organizations outside of nonprofits, organizations that really appeal to the blockchain community. So this includes open source projects, as well as some organizations that are NGOs. They're basically nonprofits, but they're not registered in the U.S. So overseas NGOs that focus on freedom of the press, or different kinds of things that really appeal to the blockchain community. So those are things that we're working on. One of the most recent things we conducted, the experiment on liberal radicalism, the LR matching concept. That's something that we'll continue to iterate on. So those are kind of the next things that we're looking towards. And lastly, now our project has a token associated with it. That's how the project got started, through raising funds through selling the Trust coin. And so we're working hard to also integrate a way for Trust coin holders to use their Trust coin to stake towards different nonprofits and organizations as a way to improve their organization's visibility on our platform. And we're working hard to find and design new ways to integrate the token as well. So these are, I think, some examples of innovation and usage of blockchain and fundraising. And we hope to continue innovating and adding value to the ecosystem.
Like I said, I'm really interested to see what you guys do moving forward. And thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jake.
The views and opinions expressed on this show are only those of its hosts and guests, and sometimes of no one at all. The CCN podcast was produced by Rockwood Audio and hosted by ccn.com. To find out more about CCN and the podcast, check us out at ccn.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at CryptoCoinsNews. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to rate and subscribe.